The scorching West African sun painted long shadows across Ouagadougou as Captain Ibrahim Traoré's convoy approached the gates of Delgado Ouedraogo University Hospital. At just 34 years old, he had become one of Africa's youngest heads of state, having seized power in September 2022 through a military coup that promised to restore Burkina Faso's sovereignty and tackle the jihadist insurgency plaguing the nation. Dressed in his signature military fatigues and the iconic red beret, a deliberate homage to Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader who had briefly transformed Burkina Faso in the 1980s, Traoré carried himself with the quiet confidence that had earned him both devoted followers and wary enemies. "Good morning, Mr. President," greeted Colonel Yameogo, his trusted defense minister and longtime friend, as they prepared to disembark. Today's hospital visit should be routine: inspection of the new wing construction, then the mining ministry briefing at noon. Traoré nodded, his mind already processing the day's agenda. Since taking power, he had made unannounced visits to public institutions a cornerstone of his leadership style, believing that real governance required direct engagement with the reality on the ground rather than sanitized reports from subordinates. "Any updates on the security situation in the eastern provinces?" he inquired, referring to the ongoing struggle against jihadist groups that had been terrorizing rural communities for years. "Stable for now, sir. Our forces maintain control of major transportation routes, and the volunteers for the defense of the homeland have proven effective in rural areas." The volunteers were civilian militias that had grown to over 90,000 members under Traoré's leadership, becoming a cornerstone of his grassroots security strategy. The convoy pulled through the hospital gates, where a modest crowd of medical staff, patients, and curious onlookers had gathered. Traoré deliberately kept such visits low-key, preferring substance over ceremony, though word of the president's appearances inevitably spread through the community. "Mr. President, welcome to Delgado Ouedraogo," greeted Dr. Oulimata Sané, the hospital's director, a respected physician in her 50s whose reputation for competence and integrity had kept her in position through multiple regime changes. "The honor is mine, Doctor," Traoré replied, shaking her hand firmly. "This hospital serves as the lifeline for our nation's health. I'm here to witness firsthand how our government's investments are improving care for our citizens." As they walked through the main corridors toward the construction area, Dr. Sané provided a comprehensive overview of the facility's operations and challenges. "We serve approximately 3,000 patients daily across all departments. The new wing will add 200 beds and house our expanded maternity ward and pediatric unit. Your government's funding has also enabled us to purchase advanced diagnostic equipment that will significantly enhance our disease detection and treatment capabilities." Traoré listened intently, occasionally asking detailed questions about staffing levels, medicine supplies, and the training pipeline for new medical professionals. His background in geology rather than medicine didn't prevent him from grasping the essential issues facing the healthcare system. As they approached the construction zone, Traoré noticed something that triggered his military instincts: a group of workers hurriedly organizing themselves, clearly unprepared for the presidential party to visit this particular section. "We weren't originally scheduled to inspect the construction site today," Dr. Sané mentioned, looking slightly puzzled by the deviation from the planned route. "All the more reason to see it," Traoré responded, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "A president should never be afraid to get his boots dirty, especially when observing how public funds are being utilized." The construction foreman, a burly man named Konate, quickly stepped forward, his demeanor betraying nervous energy. "Mr. President, "We are deeply honored by your presence, but perhaps this isn't the most appropriate moment for a detailed tour. We're currently engaged in some delicate structural work, and—" "All the more reason to observe," Traoré interrupted gently, but firmly. "I'm particularly interested in understanding how the foundation work is progressing." The foreman exchanged a quick, almost furtive glance with another worker, a detail that didn't escape Traoré's trained observation skills, developed during years of military service in hostile environments. "Of course, sir. Please follow me," Konate replied, though his discomfort was increasingly evident. As they entered the construction zone, Traoré's geological training immediately highlighted several troubling inconsistencies. Despite the foreman's claims about delicate structural work, remarkably few workers appeared to be engaged in actual construction activities. Most seemed to be moving materials or engaged in what looked suspiciously like cleanup operations rather than building. More concerning was the quantity of excavated soil piled outside the construction area, far more than would be necessary for the foundation work visible to the casual observer. Traoré's geological background made him particularly sensitive to such discrepancies in earthwork calculations. "How deep does this foundation extend?" he asked casually, his tone betraying none of the suspicion building in his mind. "Standard depth for this type of medical facility structure, Mr. President, approximately 3 meters," Konate replied, though his answer came perhaps a fraction too quickly. "I see," Traoré observed, his gaze settling on a piece of specialized boring equipment partially concealed under a tarp. "And yet I notice drilling machinery that appears designed for much deeper excavation, equipment typically used for well drilling or tunnel construction, rather than building foundations." The foreman's face betrayed a flicker of genuine concern before he composed himself. "We encountered some unexpected rock formations during the initial excavation. The specialized equipment was necessary to break through particularly stubborn geological layers." Traoré nodded noncommittally, but made a mental note of the explanation's implausibility. His geological training told him the soil composition in this area of Ouagadougou contained no rock formations that would require such specialized boring equipment. As the official tour continued, Traoré deliberately allowed himself to fall behind the main group, using the opportunity to conduct a more thorough visual reconnaissance of the construction site. Near what appeared to be a temporary storage area, he noticed fresh tire tracks leading to a section cordoned off with warning signs about unstable ground conditions. When he was certain no one was observing him closely, Traoré slipped under the cordon and approached what looked like an ordinary temporary storage shed. Inside, instead of the construction materials he expected, he discovered something that made his blood run cold. A heavy metal hatch set directly into the concrete floor, clearly military grade and entirely inconsistent with hospital construction. "Mr. President!" The urgent voice belonged to Colonel Yamayogo, who had noticed his absence and approached rapidly, his expression shifting to alarm as he observed Traoré's location. "Sir, you shouldn't be in this area without proper security protocols in place." "Look at this carefully," Traoré said quietly, pointing to the metal hatch. "Does this appear to be standard hospital construction equipment to you?" Yamayogo's expression darkened immediately as he examined the heavy installation. The hatch was clearly of military specification, far beyond anything that would be required for a medical facility. "No, sir, this is definitely military-grade infrastructure, designed for security and concealment rather than medical purposes." "Secure this entire area immediately," Traoré ordered, his voice carrying the authority that had made him a respected military commander. As Yamaogo moved swiftly to implement the security orders, Traoré stared at the mysterious hatch, his mind racing through possibilities. One thing had become absolutely certain. This was no ordinary hospital renovation project. Something significant was being concealed beneath Yalgado Uedraogo Hospital, and Ibrahim Traoré was determined to discover exactly what it was, regardless of who might be involved or what the political consequences might be. Within 20 minutes, the construction site had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, and Traoré had assembled a carefully selected team consisting of Colonel Yamaogo, two trusted military engineers, and Dr. Sane, who appeared genuinely shocked and increasingly angry about the discovery. "I want to be absolutely clear, Mr. President," she said, her voice tight with controlled indignation. "I had absolutely no knowledge of this installation. The renovation plans I personally reviewed and approved contained nothing about underground structures beyond standard utility connections and basic infrastructure." Traoré believed her completely. Dr. Sane's reputation for integrity was well established throughout the medical community, and her reaction to the discovery appeared entirely genuine and consistent with someone discovering a betrayal of trust. "Who specifically oversaw this particular phase of the construction project?" he asked. "A specialized project team from the Ministry of Infrastructure," she replied, consulting her administrative notes. "They arrived approximately 3 months ago with what appeared to be proper authorization papers signed by the previous administration. They explained it was for specialized medical waste disposal systems that required separate handling due to environmental regulations." Traoré exchanged a meaningful glance with Colonel Yamaogo. The previous administration referred to Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Dambiba's short-lived military government, which Traoré had overthrown partly due to suspicions about continued foreign influence and systemic corruption. "Let's discover what they were actually constructing," Traoré decided, nodding to one of the military engineers. The engineer used specialized detection equipment to verify there were no explosive devices, electronic surveillance systems, or other security measures protecting the hatch before carefully beginning the opening procedure. As the heavy metal door swung open, a rush of cool air emerged from below, carrying the unmistakable sense of fresh earth excavation and something distinctly metallic. A steep metal staircase descended into complete darkness, disappearing beyond the reach of their flashlight beams. The construction was clearly professional grade, with reinforced metal framing and proper ventilation systems that indicated significant planning and investment. "This is certainly not a waste disposal system," Colonel Yamaogo stated, his hand instinctively moving to rest on his sidearm. "We proceed with maximum caution," Traoré ordered. "Colonel, you and I go first. This is happening beneath a public hospital in our nation's capital. I need to assess it personally rather than relying on second-hand reports." "Mr. President, with all due respect, that directly violates established security protocols. Standard procedure requires sending a reconnaissance team first to assess potential threats." "I understand the protocols, Colonel," Traoré replied firmly, "but I also understand that some discoveries require direct presidential oversight. We proceed together." Recognizing the unwavering determination in his leader's voice, Yamaogo nodded reluctantly and took point position down the stairs, his weapon drawn and ready. Traoré followed closely, with the two military engineers behind them. Dr. Sane remained at surface level with specific instructions to alert them immediately if anyone approached the area. The tunnel system was remarkably sophisticated, featuring reinforced concrete walls, comprehensive ventilation systems, and basic electrical infrastructure that the engineers quickly activated. The main passage extended in a perfectly straight line for approximately 200 meters before opening into a much larger underground chamber. "We're definitely beyond the hospital grounds now," Yamaogo observed, consulting his tactical compass. "Based on direction and distance, we must be beneath the adjacent residential neighborhood." The chamber they entered appeared to serve as a central hub, with multiple connecting tunnels branching off in different directions like spokes on a wheel. But what immediately captured Traoré's attention were the numerous crates and sophisticated equipment arranged systematically throughout the space. "What exactly is all this?" he murmured, approaching one of the larger crates. It bore English-language labels with detailed technical specifications and various warning symbols. One of the military engineers examined the equipment more closely. "Sir, this appears to be mineral processing machinery, specifically designed for lithium extraction and initial processing operations." "Lithium," Traoré repeated, his geological background immediately highlighting the enormous significance. Lithium had become one of the most strategically valuable resources in the modern global economy, absolutely essential for battery production in everything from mobile phones to electric vehicles. Its market value had skyrocketed in recent years as the world accelerated its transition toward renewable energy technologies. The engineer nodded grimly. "This is extremely specialized and expensive equipment." This particular setup alone would cost several $1,000,000 to purchase and install. Traoré moved to another section of the chamber where geological core samples were arranged on workbenches alongside sophisticated analysis equipment. Detailed maps of Burkina Faso with specific regions highlighted in red were pinned to the walls, suggesting extensive geological surveying and planning. "These core samples are from the Bonfora area in the Cascades region," Traoré identified, recognizing the distinctive geological formations from his university training. "There have been persistent rumors about lithium deposits in that area, but no official confirmation from our National Geological Survey Department." "Look at this, sir," Colonel Yamaogo called out from another section of the chamber. He had opened one of the crates to reveal rows of metallic cylinders, each carefully labeled and secured. "These appear to be refined lithium ingots ready for international transport," he reported. Traoré examined one of the cylinders, noting its substantial weight and distinctive metallic properties. His geological training left absolutely no doubt this was high-grade processed lithium worth a considerable fortune on international markets. "They've been secretly mining and processing lithium," he concluded, anger building steadily in his voice. "Using this elaborate tunnel system to transport it out of the country without any government knowledge, oversight, or taxation." As they continued their exploration, they discovered that the branching tunnels led to various exit points throughout the city. One connected to what appeared to be a loading dock in an abandoned warehouse several blocks from the hospital. Another linked directly to the city's storm drainage system, providing additional discrete transportation routes. "This is absolutely not an amateur operation," Yamaogo observed grimly. "This represents sophisticated planning, substantial funding, and has clearly been in development and operation for several years." Traoré stood in the center of the chamber, absorbing the full implications of their discovery. Burkina Faso, already recognized internationally for its gold resources, potentially possessed significant lithium deposits, a mineral that could prove even more valuable strategically in the coming decades of global energy transition. Yet someone had created this elaborate, expensive system to extract and smuggle the resource without the country receiving any benefit whatsoever. "Secure this entire facility completely," he ordered with barely controlled fury. "I want every tunnel mapped and documented, every piece of equipment cataloged and photographed, and every document preserved as evidence. And Colonel, this information remains absolutely confidential until we understand the complete scope of what we're dealing with." As they prepared to return to the surface, Traoré's jaw tightened with resolve. This discovery transcended simple corruption or ordinary smuggling operations. It represented exactly what he had dedicated his life to fighting against: the systematic exploitation of Burkina Faso's natural resources without any benefit flowing to its people. Someone was literally stealing his nation's future, and Ibrahim Traoré was absolutely determined to identify who was responsible and stop them permanently, no matter how powerful or well-connected they might be. Back in the secure conference room at the presidential palace, Traoré had assembled a carefully selected team of his most trusted advisors to investigate the tunnel discovery. Present were Colonel Yameogo, Dr. Ouedraogo, the Minister of Mines and Resources, and Captain Kabore, head of military intelligence. No aides, no assistants, only individuals with direct operational involvement and absolute loyalty. "What we discovered today cannot leave this room under any circumstances," Traoré began, his voice low but carrying unmistakable intensity. "We are dealing with what appears to be a highly sophisticated operation designed to extract and smuggle lithium from our sovereign territory." Dr. Ouedraogo, a veteran geologist who had been Traoré's university professor before joining his government, leaned forward with obvious concern. "Mr. President, if I may provide some context, we have long suspected significant lithium deposits in the Cascades region, particularly around Banfora and the broader Boulogne area. In 2011, our National Geological Survey conducted a preliminary study that showed extremely promising mineral indicators, but there was never any official confirmation or systematic follow-up investigation." "Why wasn't there proper follow-up?" Traoré asked sharply. The minister appeared uncomfortable. "The previous administration redirected available funding toward gold exploration projects, which promised more immediate returns on investment. Several international mining companies expressed strong interest in conducting comprehensive lithium surveys, but official permissions were never granted, at least not through standard government channels." "And unofficially?" Traoré pressed, sensing there was more to the story. "There were persistent rumors of private arrangements and under-the-table agreements, but nothing I could independently verify or document," Dr. Ouedraogo admitted. "What you've discovered today suggests that someone has indeed been extracting lithium systematically without any government oversight for a considerable period." Traoré turned his attention to Captain Kabore. "What have we learned about this Horizon Construction Company that supposedly built the hospital extension?" Kabore consulted his investigation notes. "Horizon Construction was founded 5 years ago and has primarily handled government contracts during the previous administration's tenure. On paper, it appears to be owned by a Burkinabe businessman named Adama D. However, our preliminary investigation strongly suggests it's actually a shell company designed to obscure true ownership. What does the real ownership structure look like?" "The actual control appears to trace back through a complex web to a consortium of foreign investors, primarily European and Chinese entities. One name that appears repeatedly throughout the documentation is Aurora Minerals, a Canadian-based multinational mining conglomerate with extensive operations across West Africa." Traoré nodded thoughtfully, filing away this crucial information. "And regarding the hospital renovation project itself, who approved it and how was it funded?" "The project received approval in the final months of Damiba's administration. Official funding came through what appeared to be a legitimate healthcare development grant from the International Health Partnership, a respected multilateral organization. So, on the surface, everything appeared completely legitimate and proper, except for the minor detail that they secretly built an elaborate smuggling tunnel system beneath a public hospital." "Exactly, sir. What have we learned from interrogating the construction workers?" Most were day laborers hired to work only on specific, isolated sections of the project. They had no knowledge whatsoever of the underground facility. The specialized construction work was performed by a separate crew that operated exclusively during nighttime hours, according to security guards we've interviewed. And the foreman, Konate? He disappeared immediately after your visit, sir, left the construction site, and hasn't been seen since. We've issued alerts to all border crossings, but I suspect he's already fled the country. Traoré wasn't surprised by this development. The foreman's nervous behavior during the hospital visit had clearly indicated his awareness of potential exposure. What about the equipment and processed materials we discovered in the tunnel system? Dr. Wader-Ogo took this question. High-end lithium processing equipment, predominantly of Chinese manufacture but incorporating some sophisticated European components. The technology is designed for efficient extraction and initial processing specifically to reduce transport volume and increase value density. The samples we've analyzed confirm extremely high-grade lithium, with composition similar to deposits currently being extracted in Zimbabwe, which is currently Africa's largest lithium producer. What's the estimated value? Traoré asked directly. At current international market prices, approximately $45,000 per ton for battery-grade lithium carbonate. Based on the quantity of processed material we found staged for transport, combined with evidence of previous shipments we've discovered, we're looking at an operation potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars annually. The room fell into stunned silence as the magnitude of the systematic theft became clear. For a country with a GDP of approximately $18 billion, this represented an enormous loss of potential revenue that could have transformed national development prospects. I want a completely comprehensive investigation, Traoré said finally, his voice hardening with determination. Follow every lead, regardless of where it points or whom it might implicate. Colonel Yamiogo, maintain complete security around the tunnel system and continue detailed mapping of its full extent. Captain Kabori, trace every connection to this Horizon Construction Company and identify every individual involved in this operation, domestic and foreign. He turned to Dr. Wader-Ogo. Minister, I want a comprehensive geological survey of the entire Cascades region, focusing specifically on lithium deposit potential. Additionally, prepare a detailed briefing on what would be required for Burkina Faso to develop its own lithium mining and processing capabilities under national control. As the meeting concluded and his team departed with their specific assignments, Traoré remained seated alone, staring at the maps and photographs spread across the conference table. The discovery of the tunnel had clearly been just the beginning of uncovering something much larger, a network of interests that would not voluntarily relinquish their control over Burkina Faso's resources. His phone buzzed with an incoming message from an unknown number. Careful where you dig, Captain. Some holes are too deep to climb out of. Traoré's expression remained completely impassive as he deleted the message without hesitation. The threat only confirmed what he already understood. Powerful forces were indeed involved, and they were actively monitoring his investigation. But Ibrahim Traoré had not fought his way to leadership of his country only to back down when confronted by anonymous threats. If anything, the message strengthened his resolve to uncover the complete truth, regardless of personal risk or political consequences. The battle for Burkina Faso's resources and its people's future had officially begun. 3 days after the tunnel discovery, Traoré sat in his office reviewing preliminary findings from his investigation team. The emerging picture was far more complex and extensive than he had initially suspected, involving networks that reached across multiple continents. Captain Kabore entered carrying a substantial folder of documents. Mr. President, we've made significant progress tracing the financial connections behind Horizon Construction and the broader operation. Proceed, Traoré encouraged, setting aside other reports. As we suspected, Adama DA is merely a figurehead with no real operational control. The company is actually controlled through a sophisticated series of shell corporations that ultimately lead back to Aurora Minerals, the Canadian mining conglomerate, working in partnership with two Chinese state-affiliated companies specializing in battery component production. Any significant local involvement beyond DA? Kabore's expression grew more serious. Yes, sir. We've uncovered evidence of substantial payments to several high-ranking officials from the previous administration, including former Minister of Mines Salifu and General Ouattara, who was responsible for security operations in the Cascades region where the lithium deposits are located. Traoré wasn't surprised by this revelation. Corruption had been endemic under previous governments, with officials routinely selling access to national resources for personal financial gain. What about the tunnel system itself? Have we completed mapping its full extent? Not entirely, but we've made a disturbing discovery. The main tunnel branches into three separate route systems. One leads to the warehouse we already identified, another connects to an abandoned factory complex near the airport, where we found clear evidence of regular cargo flights operating without proper customs inspection procedures. Kabore paused before delivering the most significant revelation. The third tunnel extends nearly 2 kilometers to a compound officially registered to a diplomatic mission, specifically the commercial attaché of a European nation. That property enjoys full diplomatic immunity under international law. Traoré's eyes narrowed dangerously. Which nation specifically? France, sir. The room fell into tense silence. Franco-Burkinabe relations had deteriorated dramatically since Traoré came to power. He had expelled the French ambassador in early 2023 and subsequently ordered French military forces to leave Burkina Faso, ending decades of military presence and cooperation. This discovery suggested that French interests in the country extended far beyond official diplomatic and security concerns. Have we determined the operational timeline for this entire system? Based on construction records and satellite imagery analysis, the tunnel system began construction approximately 4 years ago during President Kabore's civilian administration. However, most of the sophisticated processing equipment was installed within the last 18 months during Dambiba's military tenure. Traoré absorbed this information, connecting it to broader patterns of foreign influence. So this operation predates both Dambiba's coup and my own seizure of power. This isn't about specific individuals or administrations. It represents institutional penetration and systematic resource extraction. That appears correct, sir. There's additional concerning information. The geological samples we recovered suggest the lithium deposits in the Cascades region are potentially among the largest undeveloped reserves in Africa. Preliminary estimates indicate resources that could be worth tens of billions of dollars over a sustained extraction period. This explained the elaborate and expensive smuggling infrastructure. Lithium was increasingly being referred to as white gold due to its crucial role in the global transition to electric vehicles and renewable energy storage systems. Control over lithium supplies represented genuine strategic power in the emerging green economy. What about final processing facilities? The equipment we found was clearly for initial refining, but complete processing must be happening elsewhere. We've identified connections to advanced processing plants in Morocco and South Africa. From those facilities, the refined lithium appears to be shipped primarily to battery manufacturers in Europe and China, completing a supply chain that entirely bypasses Burkina Faso's government and economy. Traoré stood and walked to his office window, looking out over Ouagadougou as he processed the full implications. This wasn't merely criminal smuggling, it was a coordinated international operation designed to extract Burkina Faso's critical mineral resources through unofficial channels, systematically depriving the country of both revenue and strategic control over valuable assets. "Sir," Traoré continued hesitantly, "there's one additional development. We've been monitoring communications since the discovery, and there are clear indications that those involved are aware we've uncovered their operation. We've detected significantly increased encrypted communications between several foreign embassies and unusual movement patterns involving individuals connected to Aurora Minerals. They're preparing either to dismantle the operation completely or to protect it through other means. Either way, we need to accelerate our response timeline." He returned to his desk and activated the intercom. "Have Colonel Yameogo, Dr. Ouedraogo, and the foreign minister join us immediately for emergency consultation." While waiting for the additional officials to arrive, Traoré outlined his strategic assessment to Traoré. "We need to approach this systematically across multiple dimensions. This isn't simply a criminal investigation, it has profound diplomatic, economic, and national security implications that could affect Burkina Faso's relationships across the international community. First, we immediately secure all identified sites connected to this operation, with the exception of the diplomatic compound, which we will address through formal diplomatic channels. Second, we freeze all financial assets of Horizon Construction and associated entities pending investigation. Third, we detain all local individuals implicated in the operation for comprehensive questioning." "Sir," the foreign minister interjected carefully, "the diplomatic implications of this course of action are potentially severe. France and Canada are significant trading partners, and Chinese investment has been crucial for our infrastructure development projects." "I'm fully aware of the diplomatic complexities. However, we cannot permit our national sovereignty to be systematically undermined or our resources stolen, regardless of which powerful entities are involved. This is precisely why I've asked you to participate in this discussion. We need to prepare comprehensively for diplomatic fallout while proceeding with necessary enforcement actions." He turned to Dr. Ouedraogo. "Minister, I want you to expedite the comprehensive survey of our lithium resources and prepare a national strategy for their development under Burkinabe control. If these deposits are as significant as indicated, they could fundamentally transform our economy, but only if we maintain sovereign control." To Colonel Yameogo, he added, "Enhance security protocols around all critical infrastructure and government facilities. If those behind this operation feel genuinely threatened, they may attempt to destabilize our government or create diversionary incidents." As the meeting concluded and his team departed to implement their assignments, Traoré remained in his office contemplating the enormous challenges ahead. The discovery of the tunnel had exposed a much larger web of systematic exploitation that had been operating in the shadows for years. For decades, Burkina Faso had been treated essentially as a resource extraction site for foreign interests, with minimal benefits flowing to its people. Whether involving gold, cotton, or now lithium, the pattern had remained consistently exploitative. Under his leadership, Ibrahim Traoré was absolutely determined to break that historical pattern, regardless of the powerful international interests that would inevitably oppose such changes. The tunnel beneath Delgado Ouedraogo Hospital had exposed far more than a smuggling operation. It had revealed the true nature of the ongoing struggle for Burkina Faso's sovereignty and future prosperity. The morning after Traoré approved comprehensive operations to seize all smuggling facilities, he convened an emergency cabinet meeting to address the rapidly escalating international situation.
In the 24 hours since Burkina Faso forces had simultaneously raided the warehouse, factory, and other sites connected to the tunnel network, international reaction had been swift, coordinated, and hostile. The French ambassador has delivered a formal diplomatic protest, reported Foreign Minister Sané. They're demanding the immediate release of 3 French nationals detained during our operations and the return of all equipment seized from what they characterize as legitimate business operations conducted with proper authorization. What is their official position regarding their commercial attaché compound that connects directly to our tunnel system? Traoré asked pointedly. They claim complete diplomatic immunity and deny any knowledge of tunnel access on their property, suggesting it must have been constructed without their awareness or authorization. Traoré's expression made clear his assessment of this explanation's credibility. Continue. The Canadians, representing Aurora Minerals, have issued a comprehensive statement characterizing our raids as illegal expropriation of private assets. They're threatening international arbitration and claiming they were conducting legitimate geological surveys with proper permits issued by previous administrations. Permits for geological surveys, perhaps, but certainly not for large-scale extraction and export of resources without proper licensing, environmental assessment, or taxation. Defense Minister Yamyogo provided the operational update. Sir, we've successfully secured all identified sites connected to the smuggling network. Total seizures include approximately 320 tons of processed lithium ready for export, mining and processing equipment valued at over $50 million, and extensive documentation detailing the entire operation. We've detained 17 individuals, including 6 foreign nationals, 3 French citizens, 2 Canadians, and 1 Chinese national. Did we encounter any resistance during the operations? Minimal direct resistance, sir. Most operational personnel had fled their positions before our forces arrived, suggesting they received advance warning. However, we've detected significantly increased reconnaissance drone activity along our borders with Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, likely intelligence-gathering operations by foreign actors assessing the situation. Traoré turned to Dr. Ouedraogo. What have we learned about the actual extent of lithium deposits from the seized documentation? The Minister of Mines looked energized despite the tense international atmosphere. The documents we have recovered confirm our geological suspicions completely. The Cascades region contains extensive lithium-rich pegmatite formations similar to those currently being exploited in Zimbabwe and Mali. Preliminary assessments based on their exploration data suggest reserves potentially exceeding 14 million tons of lithium carbonate equivalent, which would rank among the largest deposits in Africa. What's the estimated economic value? Traoré asked directly. At current international market prices, the in-ground value could exceed $30 billion over a sustained extraction period. However, the real strategic value extends far beyond raw financial calculations. Lithium is absolutely crucial for the global transition to renewable energy systems. Whoever controls these resources possesses significant geopolitical leverage in the emerging green economy. The implications were clear to everyone present. This explained why such elaborate and expensive measures had been taken to extract lithium secretly. It represented not merely profit opportunity, but strategic control over critical future resources. The Chinese embassy has adopted a more nuanced diplomatic position, the foreign minister continued. While formally protesting the detention of their citizen, they've indicated openness to discussions about mutually beneficial development of lithium resources under revised agreements.
They're positioning themselves as an alternative partner, Traoré observed, potentially offering more equitable terms than the Western operations we've disrupted. He stood and walked to the large map of Burkina Faso, mounted on the conference room wall, studying the Cascades region where the lithium deposits were concentrated.
We need to control the narrative proactively, he decided. Prepare for a national television address this evening. I will explain directly to our people exactly what we've discovered and what it means for our country's future development. Mr. President, the foreign minister cautioned, such a comprehensive public disclosure could further inflame international tensions. Perhaps a more gradual diplomatic approach would be advisable. Diplomacy has its appropriate place, Traoré interrupted firmly, but transparency and truth also have their place. Our people have an absolute right to know about valuable resources being systematically stolen from beneath their feet. We will be completely transparent about our discoveries and absolutely clear about our intention to ensure these resources benefit Burkina Faso rather than foreign interests operating in the shadows. As the cabinet meeting concluded, Traoré's communications director approached with a media update. Sir, international coverage is already extensive, though predominantly negative from Western outlets. They're framing this as another example of resource nationalism and anti-Western sentiment in the Sahel region. However, African media coverage is much more supportive, particularly in Mali, Niger, and other countries that have experienced similar challenges with resource exploitation. What about social media response? Trending strongly in your favor across the continent, sir. Hashtags like Burkina Faso Resources and hashtag Traoré Stands are gaining significant traction, with supportive messages from across Africa and the developing world. Traoré nodded thoughtfully. The battle for public opinion was as crucial as the physical security of the lithium deposits. His administration needed to articulate a clear, compelling vision for how these resources would be developed to primarily benefit the Burkinabe people while still engaging constructively with international partners on more equitable terms. That evening, seated at his desk with the flag of Burkina Faso prominently displayed behind him, Traoré addressed the nation in a carefully prepared but personally delivered televised broadcast. He spoke directly and plainly, without the bombastic rhetoric often associated with revolutionary leaders. My fellow Burkinabe, 3 days ago, during what should have been a routine inspection of renovation work at Yelgado Ouedraogo Hospital, I discovered something that has shocked me to my core. A sophisticated tunnel system hidden beneath our most important medical facility. What we have uncovered since then represents nothing less than an organized international conspiracy to systematically steal our nation's most valuable resources. He proceeded to outline the verified facts of the discovery and investigation, careful to present documented evidence rather than speculation or inflammatory rhetoric. He explained the strategic importance of lithium in the global economy and what control over these resources could mean for Burkina Faso's long-term development prospects. This is not about ideology or geopolitical alignment, he emphasized, his voice growing more passionate but remaining controlled. This is about our fundamental sovereign right to benefit from the natural resources located within our borders. For far too long, Burkina Faso has been treated as merely a source of wealth for others, while our own people continued to struggle with poverty, inadequate health care, and limited educational opportunities. Traoré's voice strengthened as he continued. This systematic exploitation ends now. Under my leadership, we will develop these lithium resources transparently, responsibly, and sustainably, ensuring that the benefits flow directly to our schools, our hospitals, our infrastructure, and ultimately to every Burkinabe citizen who has been denied their rightful share of our national wealth. He concluded with a direct message to the international community. To our friends and potential partners abroad, we remain completely open to genuine partnership and mutually beneficial cooperation. However, such partnerships must be built on respect for our sovereignty and ensure genuine mutual benefit. The era of disguised exploitation, masquerading as foreign investment, has ended permanently in Burkina Faso. As the broadcast concluded and Traoré left the television studio, his phone immediately buzzed with messages from advisors and international observers. The speech had struck a powerful chord, not just within Burkina Faso, but across the African continent. Social media platforms were flooded with supportive messages, with many comparing him favorably to Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader whose memory continued to inspire millions across Africa. However, alongside the continental support came intensified international pressure. The French government had recalled its ambassador for urgent consultations, a clear diplomatic signal of serious displeasure. Aurora Minerals had filed emergency injunctions with multiple international arbitration bodies. Most concerning from a security perspective, intelligence reports indicated unusual military movements across the border in Côte d'Ivoire, a country that remained heavily influenced by French interests. Ibrahim Traoré had taken an unprecedented public stand for his country's resource sovereignty. Now he would face the full consequences of directly challenging some of the world's most powerful global interests. 1 week after Traoré's nationally televised address, the situation had evolved into a complex, multi-dimensional standoff. While public support within Burkina Faso remained overwhelmingly strong, international pressure had intensified dramatically. Economic sanctions had been threatened by several Western nations, though not yet formally implemented. More concerning were detailed intelligence reports of increased jihadist activity in the eastern provinces, activity that appeared to be covertly encouraged by external actors seeking to destabilize the government. In his secure office at the presidential palace, Traoré reviewed the latest comprehensive security briefing with Colonel Yamiogo. "The pattern is absolutely clear," Yamiogo explained, pointing to a detailed map showing recent attacks and incidents. Insurgent groups that had been relatively dormant for months have suddenly become highly active, specifically targeting infrastructure connected to mining operations and critical transportation routes. This isn't random violence. It represents coordinated strategic targeting. Traoré nodded grimly. "They're attempting to make the country ungovernable, forcing us to seek external security assistance on terms favorable to them." "Precisely, sir. Additionally, we've detected significantly increased recruitment activities among these groups, with reports of new weapons, vehicles, and communications equipment appearing in areas near the Cascades region, where our lithium deposits are concentrated." "Definitely not a coincidence," Traoré observed with bitter irony. Their strategic discussion was suddenly interrupted by an urgent call from the Ministry of Energy. When Traoré answered, the minister's voice carried barely controlled alarm. "Mr. President, we've experienced a major security incident at the Compiègne Dam power station. Initial assessments strongly suggest deliberate sabotage. We've lost approximately 40% of the capital's electricity supply indefinitely." "Casualties?" Traoré asked immediately. "No fatalities reported, but the infrastructure damage is extensive. Our technical teams estimate repairs will require at least 2 weeks, possibly longer depending on equipment availability." "Implement emergency power allocation protocols immediately. Priority goes to hospitals, water treatment facilities, and strategic government installations. Deploy additional security forces to all remaining power infrastructure without delay." After ending the call, Traoré turned back to Yamiogo with grim determination. "This represents clear escalation from rural insurgency to attacking critical national infrastructure. They're significantly raising the stakes." Before Yamiogo could respond, another urgent communication arrived, this time from Dr. Ouedraogo, who had been personally overseeing preliminary assessment of the lithium deposits in the field. "Mr. President, we have a serious security situation at our main survey site near Bonfara. Armed attackers struck our geological survey team early this morning. 3 of our security personnel were wounded in the assault, and the attackers systematically destroyed much of our expensive survey equipment before retreating into the bush." "Was any critical survey data compromised or lost?" "Fortunately, no, sir. We've been transmitting all findings daily to secure government servers as a precautionary measure. However, this attack will significantly delay our comprehensive assessment timeline and require substantial equipment replacement. After coordinating immediate security responses to both incidents, Traoré convened an emergency meeting of his National Security Council. As his key advisors assembled in the crisis management room, he paced the floor, his strategic mind working through potential countermeasures and responses. What we're experiencing represents a carefully coordinated campaign designed to force us to abandon sovereign control of our lithium resources, he began once everyone had arrived. The operational playbook is entirely familiar from other African contexts. Create systematic instability, undermine basic government services, generate public dissatisfaction and anxiety, and eventually present external intervention as the solution to problems they themselves have created. Foreign Minister Sane looked increasingly troubled. We're simultaneously receiving intensified diplomatic pressure from multiple directions. The International Monetary Fund has suddenly raised concerns about our debt sustainability metrics, suggesting a potential comprehensive review of existing loan arrangements. Several major foreign aid organizations have announced temporary suspensions of ongoing programs, officially citing security concerns. Economic warfare designed to complement the physical attacks and infrastructure sabotage, Traoré concluded. They're systematically applying pressure from every possible angle. Defense Minister Yamiogo provided an updated assessment of military capabilities and limitations. Our armed forces are increasingly stretched thin, attempting to cover both the expanding insurgent threat and critical infrastructure protection simultaneously. The volunteers for the defense of the homeland are performing admirably in rural community defense, but they lack specialized training for sophisticated security operations. What about support from our regional allies? Traoré asked. Mali and Niger have offered concrete security assistance under our mutual defense arrangements within the Alliance of Sahel States framework. Russia has also indicated willingness to significantly expand their current advisory role and provide additional military support. Traoré considered these options carefully. While regional cooperation was absolutely essential for addressing shared security challenges, he remained wary of becoming overly dependent on any single external power, even those currently aligned with his government's strategic interests. I accept the assistance offers from Mali and Niger, he decided after careful consideration. Their forces understand the regional operational context and face identical challenges with resource exploitation and external interference. Regarding the Russians, we'll expand their advisory role but maintain complete operational control of all security forces under Burkinabe command. He turned to Dr. Ouedraogo with a crucial question. How quickly can we establish a genuinely secure perimeter around the primary lithium deposits sufficient to begin meaningful extraction operations? With adequate resources and security support, we could establish a basic operational perimeter within 2 weeks. However, developing comprehensive extraction and processing infrastructure will require much longer, especially given current security challenges and the need for environmental safeguards.
Then we need to fundamentally change our strategic approach, Traoré announced, a new plan forming in his mind. Instead of attempting to secure and develop every potential site simultaneously, we focus our resources on establishing one showcase operation, fully secured, completely transparent in its operations, with clear, demonstrable benefits flowing directly to local communities. He moved to the detailed map and indicated a specific location. Here, near Bonfora, it's the most accessible site, closest to existing transportation infrastructure, and the local population has historically been supportive of our government and policies. A demonstration project, Dr. Ouedraogo said, immediately understanding the strategic logic. Prove definitively what responsible resource development looks like under genuine national control. Exactly. Additionally, we invite international observers, media representatives, and potential partner countries to witness the operation directly, making it extremely difficult for our opponents to maintain their narrative about resource nationalism being inherently mismanaged or corrupt.
The strategic planning session continued well past midnight, developing detailed operational plans for both security enhancement and accelerated development initiatives. As the meeting finally concluded, Traoré remained behind with Colonel Yamiogo to discuss one final sensitive matter. "Have we determined whether there are other similar tunnel operations elsewhere in the country?" he asked quietly. Yamiogo nodded with a grim expression. "We've identified 2 additional sites with suspicious construction patterns remarkably similar to the hospital renovation project. Preliminary investigations suggest they may indeed be components of the same broader network we discovered. Expand the investigation immediately, but maintain complete operational security," Traoré ordered. "If our suspicions prove correct, we may have uncovered only a small fraction of a much more extensive operation." As Traoré finally retired to his private quarters in the early morning hours, he reflected on the rapidly escalating nature of the conflict. What had begun as an accidental discovery during a routine hospital visit had evolved into a comprehensive, multidimensional struggle involving resource control, national sovereignty, and competing global power interests. The path ahead would undoubtedly be dangerous, with powerful forces arrayed against his vision of genuine independence, but Ibrahim Traoré had never shied away from necessary battles, regardless of personal risk. The lithium deposits beneath Burkina Faso's territory represented far more than mere economic value. They embodied the potential for true independence, the ability to chart a national course determined by Burkinabe interests rather than external powers seeking to exploit the country's resources. That vision of sovereignty and self-determination was worth fighting for, regardless of the personal consequences he might face. 3 weeks after the coordinated attacks on infrastructure and survey operations, Ibrahim Traoré stood at the podium in Ouagadougou's newly renovated convention center. Before him sat delegates representing 27 nations, a diverse mix of African countries, emerging economies, and representatives from international organizations committed to equitable development. Notably absent were officials from France, Canada, and several other Western nations that had been directly implicated in the lithium smuggling operation. This hastily organized international summit on resource sovereignty represented Traoré's bold counter-strategy, seizing the initiative to reshape the global narrative around Burkina Faso's lithium resources while building a coalition of supportive international partners. "Distinguished delegates and esteemed guests," he began, surveying the diverse audience with quiet confidence. "Thank you for joining us on remarkably short notice. What brings us together today transcends mere discussions about minerals or mining rights. We are addressing a fundamental question of justice and equity in the global economic order." Traoré spoke without prepared notes, his geological background evident as he articulated a comprehensive vision for responsible resource development. "The lithium deposits we have discovered in Burkina Faso represent far more than economic opportunity. They represent possibility itself. The possibility of funding our own sustainable development, building our own modern infrastructure, and educating our own children without the crushing burden of unsustainable debt or exploitative international agreements." He outlined what he termed the Bonfora model, his government's innovative approach to developing the showcase lithium operation, with core principles of complete transparency, rigorous environmental responsibility, direct community benefit, and uncompromising national ownership. "We are absolutely not opposed to international partnerships and cooperation," he emphasized, addressing concerns about resource nationalism. "In fact, we actively welcome technical expertise, responsible investment, and fair market access from partners who genuinely respect our sovereignty and share our vision of truly mutual benefit. What we categorically reject is the historical model of resource extraction that systematically leaves our lands environmentally depleted and our people economically impoverished." The summit continued for 3 intensive days, featuring detailed technical presentations from Burkinabe geologists and mining experts, comprehensive panel discussions on equitable resource governance, and extensive bilateral meetings between Traoré and potential partner countries. Throughout the proceedings, the young president demonstrated remarkable depth of knowledge and absolute clarity of purpose that impressed even initially skeptical international observers. On the final day, Traoré announced a series of preliminary partnership agreements that represented a significant diplomatic victory and strategic breakthrough. China had committed to substantial technical assistance and potential investment in advanced processing facilities. Russia offered comprehensive security cooperation and specialized mining expertise. Brazil proposed an extensive knowledge exchange program focused specifically on sustainable mining practices that protected both environment and communities.
Most significantly for continental development, a consortium of African nations, including South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and fellow Sahel states Mali and Niger, had formed the African Lithium Alliance, an innovative collaborative framework for developing the continent's lithium resources with enhanced collective bargaining power in global markets. As the summit concluded, international media coverage reflected a notably shifting narrative. While Western outlets remained largely critical, their previous portrayal of Traoré as simply an anti-Western ideologue was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain as he demonstrated pragmatic, professional engagement with a diverse range of international partners across multiple continents. Back in his office after the closing ceremony, Traoré conducted a comprehensive debrief with his key ministers and advisors. "We've achieved our primary strategic objective," Foreign Minister Sané acknowledged with evident satisfaction. "We've demonstrated conclusively that we have viable alternatives to the traditional Western partners who were involved in the smuggling operation. This significantly strengthens our negotiating position with all international actors. The technical cooperation agreements will help address our most immediate capacity gaps," added Dr. Ouedraogo, "particularly the South African expertise in advanced mineral processing and the Brazilian environmental management frameworks that have proven successful in similar contexts." Traoré nodded approvingly, but remained strategically cautious. "This represents important progress, but only the beginning of a much longer struggle. Those who were profiting from secret extraction operations won't simply accept this setback gracefully. We should expect continued resistance, possibly escalating to more direct confrontation." As if confirming his assessment, Colonel Yamiogo entered the office with a deeply troubled expression. "Mr. President, we've just received credible intelligence about a significant potential threat. Our sources in Côte d'Ivoire report unusual concentrations of mercenary forces near our southern border, individuals with Western military backgrounds operating under private security contracts." "Deniable assets," Traoré observed grimly. "Preparing for what specific operations?" "Unknown at this time, sir. However, the deployment pattern suggests preparation for either targeted operations against key infrastructure or broader destabilization activities. They're establishing forward operational positions approximately 30 kilometers from our border, strategically positioned near transportation routes that connect directly to the Cascades region." Traoré absorbed this intelligence with the calm focus that had become his trademark during crisis situations. "Enhance border security measures immediately, but maintain discretion. We cannot appear provocative and risk accelerating whatever timeline they're operating under. Simultaneously, expedite development of the security perimeter around the Banafora demonstration site." He turned back to his ministers with renewed urgency.
The summit has purchased valuable diplomatic space and potential partnerships, but we must move with maximum speed to establish irreversible facts on the ground. Dr. Ouedraogo, how soon can we begin actual lithium extraction operations at the demonstration site? With the technical assistance agreements secured during the summit, we could potentially have initial operations running within 2 months, limited scale initially, but sufficient to establish operational precedent and begin building comprehensive governance frameworks. Make it 1 month, Traoré directed firmly. We need to demonstrate tangible, undeniable progress before our opponents can reorganize and launch whatever operations they're planning. As the meeting concluded and his team departed to implement their urgent assignments, Traoré remained at his desk, carefully reviewing summit outcomes alongside the troubling security reports. The discovery of the tunnel system had set in motion a rapid sequence of events that were fundamentally reshaping Burkina Faso's position in both the global economy and the broader geopolitical landscape. For decades, Africa's abundant natural resources had systematically fueled development and prosperity elsewhere, while the continent itself remained largely impoverished and dependent. The lithium deposits beneath Burkina Faso's territory offered a genuine opportunity to break this historical pattern, to harness a critical resource of the clean energy future specifically for African development and on fundamentally African terms. Ibrahim Traoré understood completely that the path he had chosen carried enormous dangers, both personal and national. Powerful international interests that had operated profitably in the shadows for years were now exposed, threatened, and undoubtedly planning retaliation. Yet he remained absolutely convinced that the greatest risk would be maintaining the exploitative status quo, continuing to allow Burkina Faso's mineral wealth to be systematically extracted without meaningful benefit to its people. Whatever challenges and threats lay ahead, the young president was unshakably determined to ensure that this time the story would have a fundamentally different ending, one written by Africans, for Africans, and in service of African prosperity and genuine independence.